prior to working here, I was the Chief Executive of the Albury-Wodonga Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I had been up in Albury-Wodonga for 13 years. And really it was a glass of wine with my lovely wife, Wendy, and when she decided it was time to come home back to Melbourne, 3 days later I saw an advertisement for the Chief Executive of the Caravan Trades and Industry Association Victoria. And I just thought, you know what, I'll give this a bit of a crack. And then I was shortlisted, and I suspect the rest is history.
I was on the interview panel when Rob Lucas come along. We had a number of candidates and we narrowed it down to 3. And Rob was a standout, and we employed Rob. He's been fantastic for our industry.
There was a couple of icon people that I used to look up to. Some are still in the industry and some have retired from the industry. And I saw what they were doing in the association, and it inspired me to say that when I have the opportunity, I would want to be part of council, and moving forward wanted to become president. In the mid-2000s, I became councillor, sat on the council for many years, and then in 2015 decided to put my hand up to become president.
Well, now here's Mike with all today's weather details.
More and more retired mums and dads are hitting the roads as caravans and motorhomes become more luxurious. Look at that. And we're better to check out the latest RVs, recreational vans, than here at the Victorian Caravan, Camping and Touring Supershow here at the Melbourne Showgrounds.
Yeah, I think in 2013 were the first conversations I had with members at the Caufield show about their desire to have more space to be able to demonstrate and exhibit more of their products and more of what they do. But of course, there was no extra room except we went into the centre car park, which meant we didn't have car parking. So there wasn't really a lot of options.
So in the end, we had actually outgrown Caufield.
As I took on the presidency, Caufield were talking about redevelopment, and we weren't part of the plans of that redevelopment, which would have divided the show. So we looked at other opportunities, and the Royal Melbourne Showgrounds come up.
It was the next logical step at the time because it was about the only venue we could actually fit into.
I went to the council and said, I think we've got a venue. And I think it will probably take us about 18 months to get everything right, get all the ducks lined up, and to run the show in 18 months' time. The council had a discussion about that, and by the end of the meeting, they decided that we were going to run the Super Show the next year. So we had 6 months of which to move out of Caufield and move into the Melbourne Showgrounds. And boy, was that an exercise.
So we changed the date, which was fairly interesting, I might say.
In the end, we were really worried that are we doing the right thing, but it's proven to be a real success story. And it really is a big, big show these days.
You want to go make some memories? We'll show you how at the Victorian Caravan, Camping and Touring Super Show. This is the big one. Don't miss it in a brilliant new venue, the Melbourne Showgrounds. Easy to get to. You'll see lots more products. There's something for everyone, and the kids will have a ball as well.
Yeah, I suspect that when we went to the Showgrounds, we knew that we had a much bigger venue, and we had an opportunity to have more members who were able to exhibit.
That's what we do. We represent our membership, so I make no apologies for it. You know, like every change, there's a little bit of argy-bargy, but we do it for a reason. We just don't do it without strong debate.
I was actually involved. I took over after the first show at the Showgrounds, and there were a few irate members because of the initial first show. So what we did is that we sat down and we tried to hear and understand what their needs were. I think now at the Showground now, show per show, we're just getting better and better.
And of course, along the way, I often felt, why is it that we've been running shows since 1954 and yet we don't seek any recognition? And what we did was we then entered into the Victorian Tourism Awards with an expectation to only benchmark ourselves. And of course, we went in the first year, we won the silver, which was just amazing. We lost to the Melbourne Cup. And I remember a judge coming up to us saying, you know, it was really close, really close. I mean, the Melbourne Cup, the international event, and we're running a caravan show. And I suppose it really just showed us that we run a professional show, and we've always, in our history, run a professional, fantastic show for everybody.
I think it was in about 2010 I got appointed to be treasurer. They chased me for a few years. I eventually took on the role and did that for some 7 years. I was involved with the changing and the selling of the building in Harcourt Street, North Melbourne.
When I started in 2011, Peter Wright came into me and gave me a folder. It was about 6 inches thick. And he said, that's my research on moving to a new premises. And I said, oh, are we moving? And he said, yeah, didn't you know?
The association was just sort of rapidly growing, so we moved to the Dynon Road premises.
And I came down to Dynon Road and I looked straight away and went, yeah, this is it. I rang Peter May up at the time and said, Peter, I think I found the property. He goes, that's absolutely fantastic. Then we went back to council and of course then we started making the plans for what it's going to look like. Then Peter May said to me, the president at the time, oh, and by the way, you've got to run a show in August and that's a new show, it's never been run before. I had a lot of connections in the border that allowed us to run a very successful show.
It's a great show for people that live in that community along the Murray and coming out of the Riverina.
That was really rewarding to see those shows kick off, especially the Albury show making a profit in its first initial show.
We've purposely gone out and grown that, but we've also grown the professionalism of the membership. And we instigate a lot of information, training, compliance, everything's on offer out of the association.
When I first came into the industry, the code VSB1, which is the Vehicle Standards Bulletin 1 for caravans, was around, but nobody ever read it. And we started saying to people, would you fly in an aircraft that's not fully compliant, or would you let a truck on the road that wasn't fully compliant? And here we are putting 2-tonne trailers on the road that weren't fully compliant.
Well, compliance is important. We talk about marketing, PR. You only need one problem that puts a black name against the industry. So compliance, safety and reputation, industry reputation or brand reputation is critical.
We wanted everybody to come up to the same standard, and this is where all the compliance started, and we ordered ourselves. We didn't want government to start clamping down. We started to do it ourselves and show the government that we were serious.
And of course, out of that came this view that the association should support, Victoria should support accreditation programs because it's part of going from good to great. And that's where ServiceSafe comes from, the Service and Repairs Accreditation Program. What is it we want ServiceSafe to do? We wanted the public to be safe.
In 2014 at the National Industry Summit in Brisbane, I got up and spoke to all the members and I said we need to merge the RVNAA and CRVA. We can't substantiate two national industry bodies, and everyone in the room looked at me as if I had two heads. And 18 months later we merged CRVA, RVNAA to become what it is today. Myself, as President of the State Association, and the National Chairman signed a Memorandum of Understanding on a serviette, which the CIAA have still got to this day.
In 2011, when I started and we started talking about, what was the basic statistics of our industry? Do we know how many people were employed? Do we know what our industry's worth? We didn't have any of that data. And I pay great homage to Peter May in wanting to drive this as the president.
When Rob Lucas came on board, spoke to him about what I was looking for from a training regime, what we needed to do, and in the end instigated the industry blueprint for us, which has allowed us to have a platform.
And of course, when the blueprint came out, it showed the gaps. And one of those significant gaps was in skills formation.
Way back in 1994, Roadstar and Northern TAFE and the industry tried to get a training program going, but there was not the will from the government. We had no money from the government, which made it very difficult. Then over the years, when our new CEO took over, he was from a TAFE background, and he started talking to the TAFEs and the government, and that's where we are today. So we've actually got a Certificate 3 in caravan service and repair and manufacture.
And of course, in 2015, we launched the National Caravan Industry Training College.
Today marks a historic day for our association and its members with the launch of the National Caravan Industry Training College.
That college, as people say, happened overnight. Well, it took 4 years to create. It became the calling card of our industry. It became the place where our members can say, that's where I train for, specifically for the caravan industry. And of course, we've gone from strength to strength since.
As an association, what we are planning to do moving forward is to support our members with training, education, the trade day. The trade day that we had last year was fantastic for the members of the supply chain as well.
The people get trained on the job. The school, the Certificate 2 and Certificate 3 that they can get in their craft is something that's going to be highly revered by the general public. It's going to improve the quality of the product that we're selling and making and repairing because people have done these qualifications.
And that's going to make it easier for someone employing someone, and it'll also give someone a personal satisfaction. I've worked in this industry for so many years. I have got a piece of paper to say I've achieved this.
I had a meeting with a couple of members who we started just talking a bit about the history, and I found out some fascinating stuff about the industry. And of course, then I got in contact with people like Tom Harding and Bruce Illingworth, and they gave me just so much information. I then spoke to Colt Parrow, and then talked about this group of oldies who used to get together and have lunch.
Those lunches with Gordon, the things that I've learnt, and I'm sort of the unofficial historian for the CIA, but I get most of my information from the likes of Gordon and Max and all those other chaps sitting around.
I got invited to one of those days, and I just had an absolute ball. But more importantly, out of that was born the idea of the Victorian Caravan Industry Hall of Fame.
We used to have the industry night at Moonee Valley. It got too big, and we ended up at Crown. And we have a look back last year, there's over 500 people in the room.